Hey, everybody. It is Friday, December 20th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Moshe Wanunu. This is the place where we bring you just the facts and we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. As you may assume, based on that intro, I am solo today. Jill is off to Florida ahead of a well-deserved vacation as we head into the holiday period here. A heads up that we will have a updated edition on Monday, and then we'll be taking a break for the rest of the week. So stay tuned here for today's edition and Monday's edition. We'll have a special look ahead for 2025 just before New Year's, the week of December 30th. In the meantime, coverage will continue every day, for the most part on Mo News Premium over on the Premium Instagram account. So if you haven't joined already over at mo.news/free trial, you'll get 2 weeks free to check out Premium, and that's where you'll get your updated day-to-day news as we track all the headlines in late December, early January. As we know, the news doesn't stop even for holidays here. So again, if you want to catch the latest and greatest, make sure to join Mo News Premium over at mo.news/premium for a monthly membership or annual membership. In the meantime, let's get to today's headlines. We're watching today to see if Congress can prevent a government shutdown. We're just hours away here, depending on when you're listening to this podcast. It's not looking very good right now. After the latest budget plan, endorsed by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, failed to pass the U.S. House. I'll have details. Meanwhile, accused CEO killer Luigi Mangione extradited to New York yesterday. He now faces federal charges, which means he could face the death penalty if convicted. The FDA is considering banning a dye that exists in many foods. We'll tell you about it. A story from France, a high-profile rape trial that has captivated the country, comes to an end with justice for the victim. Staying with legal news, another one of Trump's legal cases looks like it may go away for good after a major decision in Georgia yesterday. We'll also tell you about the latest on the drones being spotted in America's Northeast. And I'll end here with some news about Bluey for many of you parents as you plan your next vacation. And of course, it's Friday, so we'll have cheers to the freaking weekend, what we're watching, reading, and eating this weekend. All right, let's get started here with Shutdown Watch over in Washington. The federal government is barreling towards a government shutdown as you listen to this podcast after the U.S. House last night overwhelmingly voted down Speaker Mike Johnson's latest plan to fund the government and keep things open. The plan had the support of President-elect Donald Trump and his billionaire advisor Elon Musk, but still went down by a significant margin. It needed 2/3 of the U.S. House to pass, and it didn't even get close to that. It went down 235 to 174, including more than 36 Republicans who voted with the vast majority of Democrats to vote against the measure at issue, keeping the government funded and open as of midnight tonight. That's the deadline. Midnight tonight, they must pass a plan to keep the government open. Otherwise, it shuts down early morning hours tomorrow. The newest Republican proposal would have extended federal operations into mid-March, so effectively keeping the government open through early spring there. It also would have sent more than $100 billion to natural disaster survivors. Think in Hurricane Milton, Hurricane Helene. There are a number of disasters. FEMA has run out of money, and they're looking to fund those. This bill also would have suspended the country's borrowing limit for the next 2 years. We've told you about this before, the debt limit. This is a country, we're one of the few countries out there that sets a limit on how much we can borrow, and we need to extend that every couple years. Right now, it's not an urgent issue, but Donald Trump has called on Republicans to extend the debt limit, so this plan would have suspended it, meaning they could spend whatever they want for the next 2 years. So all of that was in this package. It went down last night, and it is not clear with less than 24 hours to go here what the next move will be. But let's back up here. We told you a bit about this yesterday. The House and Senate Republicans, Democrats have been negotiating a compromise plan for a number of months here to keep the government open. The plan was to vote on that yesterday. They had a game plan. It was a 1,500-page bill. It ensured, it gave the Democrats certain things they wanted. It gave Republicans certain things they wanted. But on Monday morning, Elon Musk, Donald Trump chime in last second and say, we don't like the plan. It spends too much money. We want you to do a slimmed down version of the plan, and we also want you to suspend the debt limit just before Donald Trump takes over in January. So the plan that was negotiated for months, thrown out the window. They woke up this morning trying to come up with a new plan here. That original plan, 1,500 pages in a bill. It included the disaster aid, it included reforming drug pricing, prescription drug pricing in the country. It included a raise for members of Congress, the first raise for members of Congress in 15 years here. A number of measures. But Elon Musk, Trump, said it's too much. We want you to cut it. Now, they were chiming in here in the last second, 24 hours before they were set to vote. So it led Republicans here to have to go back to the drawing board. Why? Well, many of them want to curry favor with Donald Trump. He's the next president starting on January 20th. And Elon Musk, richest man in the world, has vowed to fund opponents, give as much money as it takes to opponents of anyone who would vote for that plan. So that sent them back to the drawing board yesterday. Plan B. Speaker Mike Johnson, Republican, close to Donald Trump, spent the day negotiating with Vice President-elect J.D. Vance, other Republicans, on a new plan here. It was a slimmed-down package. I mentioned the first package, 1,500-page bill. The new package they voted on yesterday, 100 pages, just over about 100 pages. It also funded the government, included disaster aid. It had many less provisions than that original plan. And it included, as I mentioned, a suspension of the debt limit, saying that effectively for the next 2 years, the Trump administration can borrow as much as it wants to fund what it wants to. The current debt limit, the amount the U.S. government can borrow, is at $32 trillion. That was suspended a couple years ago. That is set to run out next year, but Trump doesn't want to deal with it next year. He doesn't want to have that fight. He dealt with it a couple times during his first term. So he has said, hey, can you guys take care of this now before I take office? And so you had the slimmed down package, the debt limit pause, and that was the plan that they voted on yesterday to keep the government open. Democrats, by the way, had been on board with the previous plan, the 1,500-page bill that included all these other provisions. They said, wait a second, you reneged on that deal. We will not support this new deal. Republicans, good luck passing it. And as I mentioned, it did not pass last night with nearly 40 Republicans voting with Democrats. The issue for many of those Republicans, these are hard right conservatives, their issue, they don't want to increase the debt limit. They have a major issue with that. That's been a huge fight for a while. They're fiscal conservatives. They want to spend less here. A reminder that debt limit fights, if you haven't listened to this podcast before, have been an issue in Washington for more than a decade here. It's led to multiple government shutdowns. And so with Trump and Musk throwing this in at the last second, that really threw folks for a loop there. So multiple things happening here. Keep the government open, fund disaster aid, a whole bunch of other measures, freeze the debt limit here, allow Donald Trump to borrow whatever he wants to for the next 2 years. And between Republican opponents on the hard right and Democrats saying, we're not bailing you guys out after you blew up the initial deal and you've done a new deal here, the legislation went down last night. So that now means Speaker Mike Johnson, Republicans are back to the drawing board with just hours to go here to try to keep the government functioning past midnight tonight. He has a very slim majority, Johnson does, and the issue is that he's got a couple dozen Republicans who are fiscal conservatives who weren't going to vote for even the first plan, which is why he negotiated the original plan with Democrats. But that then upset Republicans because Democrats said, if you want me to vote for this plan, Republicans, we want you to add some of the stuff that we want in there. And so that meant a growing bill. That bill grew to 1,500 pages. Again, Trump jumps in last second, rejects it, new plan. Democrats don't like that. Some Republicans don't like that. And so now they have to figure out what's going to happen. Well, in the meantime, what I'm being told by folks on Capitol Hill, Democrats and Republicans I've been messaging with late on Thursday, is that a government shutdown is all but certain right now. What does a government shutdown mean? Well, we've had a few of those in recent years, if you might recall. All non-essential government functions must stop as of midnight tonight. During a shutdown, the federal government is unable to pay millions of employees, including members of the military, reservists. Just before the holidays here, hundreds of thousands of government workers will be furloughed, meaning they will temporarily stop going to work. A reminder here, back in 2013, we had a significant shutdown. About 850,000 workers were furloughed during that time. Those are the non-essential workers. Then the essential workers are told to come to work, but they will not be paid for the duration of the shutdown. So key government functions will continue, aspects of the military, public safety, air traffic control, the TSA at airports, but all those individuals will come to work not being paid. So they might show up, but within a week or two, depending on how long this thing lasts, they might not show up to work. And that's how things ended the last time around. People were experiencing, it might have been you, Major delays at airports as air traffic controllers, TSA agents stop showing up to work, being like, why am I working? I'm not being paid right now. And so ultimately that made Congress last time end the shutdown. This time around, there is a contingency plan for how to operate during a shutdown. Also, all those workers who won't get paid during the shutdown will get paid afterwards. Nonetheless, some might still not show up here. So there is major concern. I've been hearing from a number of you in the military world who live paycheck to paycheck. I've been hearing from a number of you in the military world who live paycheck to paycheck and need to be paid in order to survive here. You've been writing in worried about how long this might last, where you might take out loans in the meantime to be able to pay basic family expenses here. Major concern here is that ultimately during a government shutdown, there are a number of people, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people impacted here. The longest shutdown recently was a shutdown back in 2018 into 2019. That lasted 34 full days. That was one of those shutdowns that took place. There are two of them during the Trump administration, his first term in office, and ended due to some of those delays you saw at the airport as people said, I'm not even going to show up to work anymore. National parks did remain open during that shutdown, but trash was piling up with park employees furloughed. And as I mentioned, the issue at the airports, TSA agents started calling in sick, leading to delays at airports. What still functions during a government shutdown, those of you who collect Social Security, you're still good. U.S. Postal Service, that still functions during a shutdown here. Medicare, Medicaid, there are certain programs that regardless of a government shutdown will still operate. Nonetheless, a number of people will be impacted here. And again, we're looking at least a certainty that the government will shut down at least temporarily at tonight. The question is, how long will this last? How will Republicans come to a compromise here? Remember that it's not just up to the U.S. House. Even if Republicans in the U.S. House can come to a compromise and vote and maybe get some Democrats aboard on a measure, it then needs to go to the Senate. The U.S. Senate right now still controlled by Democrats, and they have their own demands here on what they want to see. They would need to pass a bill, and then it goes to President Joe Biden, who would need to sign it. Again, there was a measure here that was agreed to. They were planning to vote on in the last 24 hours. That was killed here, lobbied against by Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and others in the last second. And so now we're left in purgatory here. At least many government employees are. And so that's a story we'll continue to monitor throughout the weekend. Be sure to stay tuned to our Instagram feed for details on that. But government shutdown watch continues here in the final hours before a deadline at midnight tonight. All right, let's get to the speed read here from NBC News. Luigi Mangione, the suspect indicted in the murder of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson, waived his right to extradition yesterday. We told you about this on the podcast yesterday morning, and he ended up being flown from Pennsylvania to New York Thursday afternoon to face federal charges. Now, Mangione faces gun charges in Pennsylvania, but he faces murder charges in the state of New York, and those took precedent. So he was flown to New York and then flown via chopper into Manhattan, only to find out that he also now faces federal charges. So he's got state charges in Pennsylvania, he's got state charges in New York, and now he's got federal charges that were unsealed yesterday. 2 counts of stalking and murder through use of a firearm and firearms offense here. The federal charges are significant. Why? It now means he faces the prospect of the death penalty. There is no death penalty at the state level in New York, but there is a federal death penalty. Now the question will be, will New York State or the feds get to trial first? Will they work something out, or will it basically be a race here between the feds in New York State to see who tries Luigi Mangione for murder first? That's something we're going to watch here between the U.S. attorney and the DA who pursues it. In the meantime here, significant because this sort of sets up the next stage here. He was in Pennsylvania on those gun charges where he was originally arrested. He was trying to fight them briefly, but ultimately decided to waive extradition, realized that the fight was going to end at some point, whether he wanted to or not, because the state of Pennsylvania had said, hey, listen, over in New York, you face murder charges. We're going to transfer you up there. Now, that transfer yesterday, some of you might have seen the video I posted over on Instagram of him landing in Manhattan, and dozens of NYPD, very armed NYPD, accompanying him from the chopper to the bus. I'm sure there was a security threat or risk assessment done, but ultimately it was a very high-profile perp walk, a perp walk like I've never seen before, having covered a number of these, including the mayor of New York, Eric Adams, He was behind him. He had said at a later press conference yesterday, he wanted to look Mangione in the eye and show him that this sort of behavior, these sort of crimes in New York are unacceptable. So you saw the mayor of New York there at the heliport there in Manhattan as Mangione was taken to be arraigned in New York court there. And also, by the way, outside the courthouse, there were some fans of Luigi Mangione carrying signs that said "Free Luigi" and other various phrases. So that was outside the courthouse in Lower Manhattan. We're going to continue to watch here the timeline of these trials. Again, he faces these Pennsylvania charges, but significant here are the New York murder charges, the federal murder charges. New York raised things to first-degree murder in the last 24 hours, saying that he effectively committed an act of terrorism because there was a political component to his murder of the healthcare CEO, that he had a political agenda there. Typically, when politics is involved, that then brings in the definition of terrorism and then raised it from second-degree murder to first-degree murder. So we'll continue to watch here the developments when it comes to the Mangione case. All right, our next story here comes to us from NPR. The FDA is considering a ban on the food dye Red Number 3. You may have seen it on the back of various food packaging over the years. A decision now could come in a matter of weeks as to whether the FDA will ban Red Number 3. They've been reviewing a petition to ban it since 2022. Now, this dye, Red Number 3, has been used for more than 50 years in thousands of products, including candy, snack foods, soda. But there have been questions here about the dye's impact going back decades. The FDA actually, back in 1990, banned the use of Red Number 3 in cosmetics and medicated ointments. Research at the time had shown that the dye could cause cancer in animals in high doses. But at the time, the FDA, back 35 years ago, concluded that it was still safe in small amounts used in food. So Red Number 3 continues to be used in food to this day. The FDA saying it was safe. Last year, though, California, the state of California, passed a law to ban Red Number 3. That law takes effect in 2027. Lawmakers in 10 other states have introduced legislation to ban Red Number 3 in foods. And those state actions do have an impact on the FDA. Now that California has banned it, the FDA is taking a closer look here. They have found that in more than half of 25 studies conducted on Red Number 3 in recent years, more than half pointed to a negative association between Red Number 3 and children's behaviors, saying Red Number 3, these studies said, contributed to symptoms of inattention, hyperactivity, and other behavior when it comes to kids. Right now, Red Number 3 is banned or severely restricted in a number of countries, including Australia, Japan, and nearly all of Europe. And Red Number 3 is not the only focus. There is a number of health advocates out there who are saying that there is a blue dye, a yellow dye, a green dye, an orange dye that's still used in various foods and products. And they're calling on the FDA to also ban those. Right now, the focus is Red Dye Number 3. And look for a headline on that in the coming weeks. Now to a headline from The Guardian. This is a big trial that was being watched in France. A gruesome and widely publicized rape trial in France has come to a close after months. Dominique Pelicot was sentenced to a maximum of 20 years in prison after admitting to drugging his then wife Gisèle for nearly a decade and inviting strangers he met online to also assault her. We posted this story, terrible story, over on Instagram yesterday. The case involved 50 co-defendants ranging in age from 26 to 74, soldiers, firefighters, journalists, all handed sentences between 3 to 15 years in prison, all part of this mass assault on this man's wife. Now, of those 50 men, 15 of them, 1-5, have acknowledged guilt here. Dominique was further convicted for raping another woman beyond his wife and for distributing illicit photos of his wife, their daughter, and daughters-in-law here. He was also arrested back in 2020 for trying to film under a woman's skirt. Just terrible allegations here. Police seized his devices and found evidence here, mass evidence of the assault on his wife, inviting other men to participate here. Apparently, he admitted to crushing sleeping pills into his wife's food and drink before the assaults. Gisèle said she had no idea what was happening to her until she was approached by police. The couple had been married for nearly 50 years here, but she had been experiencing memory loss, blackouts, fatigue, pain, a number of issues, not aware that her husband was drugging her on a regular basis. Just a terrible story here, but ultimately justice for Gisèle here, as they have convicted a number of the men here who were involved in the sexual assaults. All right, back here stateside from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, that Georgia criminal case into Donald Trump we've been following. A major development, the Georgia Court of Appeals has disqualified the DA from Fulton County, Fani Willis, from prosecuting the case against Trump at issue. The appearance of impropriety linked to her romantic relationship with the special prosecutor she had hired. Fani Willis had hired effectively her boyfriend to prosecute the case. Now the courts in Georgia have said, well, that disqualifies you and your entire office from prosecuting this case, a major development. This was a case being conducted on the state level, specifically into Trump's attempts and people around him to try to interfere with the election results in Georgia in 2020. He had lost ever so slightly to Joe Biden. He called state officials there, trying to force them to change the result in Georgia. That led to criminal proceedings here. Fani Willis leading the case, but now she is disqualified from the case. So is her office. There are major concerns now about finding another DA willing to take on this case against the now sitting president, Donald Trump. And so ultimately, this means the case is probably dead against Trump. He was facing major fines and potential prison time related to election interference here. Unclear how this will proceed, and if it does, will it be until 2029? And it comes, as we've been telling you, the two federal cases against Trump related to his classified records at Mar-a-Lago, January 6th, effectively dead now as Trump takes office as president again. And then there was that New York case, the Stormy Daniels case, the hush money case. Trump was convicted there, but never sentenced, as now Trump has been elected again. So they've decided in New York not to sentence him. That's been pushed back until he is done in office in 2029, more than 4 years from now. And so ultimately, what this means with this latest development in Georgia, the criminal cases against Donald Trump effectively over, as he is set to take office in just about a month. All right, from ABC News now, the FAA has issued a ban on all drone operations in dozens of areas of New Jersey and New York until mid-January. This comes as there have been so many drones or alleged drones spotted across the Northeast in recent weeks. Uncrewed aerial drones have been lighting up the sky over New Jersey, Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania. A number of local officials demanding answers here as to what was going on. In the meantime, though, the FAA has established a number of temporary flight restrictions over key sites in New Jersey, critical infrastructure. We're talking about power plants, airports, military bases. That's New Jersey, as well as New York. In New York, they've established an area, a temporary flight restriction over LaGuardia Airport, areas of Long Island, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, Rockaway, a whole variety of areas here. The FBI has received more than 5,000 tips in the last few weeks about drone sightings in New Jersey and other states. Now, the feds have said that about 100 of the 5,000 are actually suspicious. In many cases, people are looking up and seeing planes and other types of aerial vehicles, thinking they're drones. But ultimately, about 100 of the 5,000 are suspicious. The feds say that they've been checking this out. They don't see a security threat. They think that most of the sightings are airplanes, helicopters, or commercial drones. That's still done very little to assuage the fears of public. That's still done very little to assuage the fears of many members of the public, people in this audience, elected officials who are still wondering what is going on with all these drones over the sky. In the meantime, though, they have passed this ban. We'll see how that impacts things across the Northeast. And finally, here from TheWrap.com, Bluey is coming to Disney theme parks and cruise ships beginning next year. Disney Experiences, the division of the company that includes Disney Parks and Disney Cruise Lines, has announced that Bluey will come to the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, the Disney World Resort in Orlando, as well as the Disney Cruise Line. Disney Cruise Line voyages originating in Australia and New Zealand will be the first to let families interact with Bluey and Bingo. Like never before, they claim. Disney World and Disneyland, as part of the press release, said they will have special activations related to Bluey here. Details on how guests can meet Bluey will be shared in the months ahead here. And that comes, as Jill told you earlier on the podcast this week, that Disney has acquired the theatrical rights, the movie rights here, to the film about Bluey. That's expected to be released in 2027, so just over 2 years from now. And then that film will land over on Disney+. All right, let's end here with cheers to the freaking weekend. What we're watching, reading, and eating this weekend. What we're watching, Jill tells me that she'll be watching the new Bob Dylan biopic. That hits theaters on Christmas Day, so look out for the Bob Dylan movie there. I'm going to check out Carry On over on Netflix. They tell me that it's going to be the new Die Hard as it comes out just before Christmas. So Carry On. Let me know what you guys think about it over on Instagram. I'll check it out this weekend. All right, when it comes to what we're reading this weekend, Jill is reading The Women by Kristen Hanna. It's a historical fiction book about an American woman who goes to be a nurse during the Vietnam War and her life when she comes home. She says it came recommended by a number of you in the Mo News community, so she's looking forward to reading The Women by Kristen Hanna. For me, I have gotten an early copy of The Power Pause by Neha Rush, who I consider a friend. She's also the founder of the Instagram account Mother Untitled. She has a new book out in January if you want to pre-order it. It speaks to the career pause that many women take during maternity leave, returning to work, how they want to return to work, a look at American women, the challenges that you all face related to maternity leave and family leave, and then returning to work again. She has a great advice in the book, and we will have her on a Mo News interview podcast in the new year. And finally, what we're eating this weekend, Jill says she's headed to Joe's Stone Crab in Florida. Great choice, Jill. I will see you there when we head to Florida later this month. As for me, right now, I'm really into Nuno's yogurt. If you've seen it at the supermarket, it's spelled Nounos, basically my last name. No relation, though. But that's what led me to be interested in the yogurt, Nuno's yogurt. I'm digging the peach flavor, the strawberry flavor. You can check it out. I think it's available in most grocery stores. At least I've seen it on most shelves. All right. With that, we end this week on the Mo News podcast. Appreciate all of you for listening. A reminder, if you haven't already, please leave a review for us in the Apple Podcast Store. It helps this podcast keep going and growing and rise in the rankings and get exposure to people who haven't discovered it yet. So please leave a review for this podcast if you can. In the meantime, though, our coverage will continue for the most part for the next 2 weeks over on the Mo News Premium Instagram account. So make sure to join that over at mo.news/free trial. Lock in your 2024 rates. Our rates are going to go up for subscriptions in 2025. So it's just a matter of days here to subscribe right now to the Mo News premium account. It gives you access to our premium podcast, our premium Instagram page, and a whole number of great features, as well as knowing you're supporting independent news here at Mo News. Anyway, guys, have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. And Jill and I will see you back here on Monday.